also a good specialization.
Ma'am, I
You will
had
get
to
to know.
take it.
Yeah,
mm,
you will see in these 5, 6 classes that we are doing together. You will see, and then obviously the rest of the course.
I had to take it, ma'am, because those were weekday classes and I had a evening part-time job, so I couldn't just do that in the
Okay.
morning or in the work days. So also, so I had to switch. And sir said it is a best choice that you should go with HR management. So I
Yeah.
decided to do this one. So, ma'am, is this
Okay.
the first course relevant class, or we have already taken the classes before this?
No, I think today is first class. Yesterday also we talked about principles of management, which is very relevant. So maybe just take a look at the YouTube
Right.
link. In case you have some questions, you can just prepare those questions and come back and ask. No issues anytime.
Right.
All right. So we are starting with diversity and inclusion today. Little off the track topic to start with, but I thought it would be great to give you a good overview of what exactly diversity and inclusion in HR, how do we manage it, what are the things that we are supposed to do. So let me know when you see the screen. You can see the screen, right? So what do you think? What diversity and inclusion is all about in HR? Let's understand from all of you first, and then we'll take it ahead.
Diversity means different. If we are working with different people, that means diversity.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And what is inclusion?
And including all the diversities and taking or achieving the same goal or working towards the same goal might be.
That's a bookish or Google-ish thing. What do you feel? What should be diversity and inclusion?
Inclusion means to involve something, yeah, include something.
Right. So inclusion means including all the people who come from different diverse backgrounds into the system in organizations. So what happens in organization is we face a lot of problems about interaction with certain people, about the biases that we have, about stereotypes that we carry and prejudices we carry. So how are we going to stay away from all these things and include all the people coming from different religious background, cultural background, ethnicity, gender, and accept them inside a system which is called organization so that organizational goals can be achieved properly. So this is the summary of topics that we are going to cover today, which is definition of diversity, what are the norms, workplace inclusion, difference between the two, how the companies can promote DEI and culture, and best practices. All right. So what is diversity? Like I just shared with all of you, diversity is a term used for workplace composition of employees with varying characteristics. These characteristics differentiate groups and people from one another. So we all come from so many different, especially in India. We come from so many different states. There are so many different religion altogether. There are languages that is being spoken. Other than languages, there are dialects that is being spoken. Everything is so different from each other. And when we come together in an organization, all these people come from different backgrounds. All these aspects of their differentiations come in the picture while you're working together as a team. जैसे ही एक साथ टीम में हम शुरू करते हैं देन हमारे लैंग्वेज बैरियर्स भी आ जाते हैं हमारे कल्चरल बैरियर्स भी आ जाते हैं सो मेनी डिफरेंट थिंग्स so how are we going to remove those things is what we are going to talk about today. And diversity, inclusion, and equity is a very important topic in HR, which is happening these days. Because of whatever you see around you, the political people, the governments everywhere, not just in India, outside India also, they start playing everything around D and Y, right? So they don't really accept. create differences between people, and what in human resource management or what in organization to run the organization nicely, what we tell people is to remove these barriers out of you, right? So that people can perform really, really well and you can actually achieve a lot of different things. So diversity is not just about gender and race and age. There are so many different things that can be called in diversity. For example, what race you're from, what gender is there. And gender is also, it's not just male and female. Then there is a third gender, which is transgenders that we call. Then age, physical abilities, which is some disabilities are also there. So disabled amount of people who are there, who we call differently able, they comprises of 2% of the total population. But why don't we see these 2% in the schools when we were studying? We hardly have people who have different disabilities studying with us. So why there is a gap right from the where we have to start our education, and then the similar things keeps going on from education, from school to college also you don't see, in universities you won't see those people. Then obviously at workplaces also you won't find these people coming and joining the workplace together as one of the individuals as we are. Right? So we are going to talk about all these things and how those biases can really be taken care of. Then language barriers for sure. India, is diversified so much. Other than India, also when we go out and see, then again there are different languages. But yeah, India के अंदर ही इतना differentiation है. So how are we going to remove that? Then culture, religion, veteran status. So veteran status is people coming from military, army backgrounds. How are they going to get involved into the system, in the organizations, and what kind of biases do they face? Then sexual orientation of people. So LGBTQ, uh, though people should not really be bothered about what kind of sexual status orientation you come from, whether you are a gay or a lesbian or you are bisexual or asexual. It has nothing to do with what you're going to put into the organization. Your skills, your merit should be the things that we should be talking about. But still, we have these kind of differentiations coming in, and hence we are going to talk about this as well. Then education, obviously, education background creates a lot of differences, and nationality, right? So these are the few things. How the inclusive workforce should look like, where you have all these things, all these differentiation, diversification coming together and working in a platform. But is the problem is getting solved when we are just inviting them in the organization, hiring them, selecting them in the organization? Is that the only thing that we can do? What more can be done to make them inclusion? I mean, to make them or maybe to make them feel included in the entire system so that they can be a part of the company as well. So this is what workplace inclusion talks about. So workplace inclusion, as you can see the definition, it says where people with varying characteristics are included in the company culture. A workplace welcomes and supports employees who vary in characteristics such as age, gender, ethnicity, language, physical ability, culture, religion, education, sexual orientation, and etc. And they still feel valued, that they are an important and integral part of the organization. There is a differentiation between the two that just try to show you so that you can understand it. So meaning of diversity, it's about differences. Meaning of inclusion, it's about embracing those differences. Then what each do, diversity is often used in context of hiring diverse employees. And what do you do once you get people who are different into your company is what inclusion does. Then inclusion is a deliberate action aimed at creating a workplace culture where all differences are welcomed, accepted, and appreciated. Right? Whatever you have to say in the organization, whether you want to be a part of the decision making, whether you want to be a part of the committee, or you want to do a project together with your other employees, with your peer groups, you need to feel that you are always accepted, welcome, and appreciated. There is no other backdrop talks happening about you, whether you are coming from different background, or maybe because your race is different, maybe your color is different, all those things. So how are we going to remove those things? Is the solution that we have to provide. So what are the benefits if you hire from different backgrounds? So this you are going to talk. I am not going to talk today. One by one, I'm going to ask you to explain these points so that we can have better interaction. So Anjan, what do you think variety of different perspective
Ma'am,
is
variety,
what?
ma'am, perspectives means, ma'am, different ideas. Everyone has different ideas. They can give. So
Yeah,
perspectives is related to ideas only.
that's all, just ideas. Anything else also can be included in that?
No, ma'am.
Okay. So variety of different perspective is basically putting across everything that comes to your mind, right? Whether it is about an idea, whether it is about a solution to some problem, whether it is about taking a decision about something in the organization. When you have diverse workforce working together, that means they are coming from different background altogether. So, okay, another question that I have for all of you is, how many of you understand that differently abled people, yeah, people with disabilities, face what kind of problems?
Ma'am, discrimination.
Correct. So one is discrimination. Very good. What else?
Ma'am, salary differentiation may be at some workplaces.
True. Salary gaps are there.
One time, ma'am, on the first, the HR being HR, someone would like to choose a healthy and like a person who is physically fit rather than choosing a differently able person. That can be
And
one of the point.
it's not just HR being HR. This is how human interventions happen, right? We being humans, because we have never been like, we are just talking about कि if you have studied in a school or a college, how many people, how many differently able or disabled people you saw in schools and colleges with you,
Very less actually.
right? Hardly maybe one or two, though the percentage in itself is very less. But there are hardly any people who get an opportunity to study with us also. With us, meaning people who are general, like uh, we are completely able in terms of our physical abilities. We are in general class, always available everywhere. So we are basically that privileged class, everyone. And this is why we don't see those differences happening around us, is because we have never experienced those problems, difficulties at all. So different perspective is that you have to understand, what if I'm hiring a person with certain disability, but I have hired this person in the organization for the skill and the merit and the qualification that person brings in to the organization. Maybe this person is similar to what Suman is, exactly similar, and I'm not looking at the ability differently ability. And what I'm going to do then in the organization, I'm going to ensure that every time when I am asking Suman something, I'm asking this person also about something, right? So there is no differentiation that they can see. If I'm taking a perspective that how satisfied you are in the organization, I'm asking the similar questions with all of those people as well, right? Now this is about differently able. Now let's talk about the other people who comes from different सेक्सुअल ओरिएंटेशन LGBTQ जिसको हम कहते हैं. How many of you understand LGBTQA?
Ma'am, yes, we understand, ma'am. Yes.
Completely, you know the difference. You know what L is, what G is, what B is, what T is.
Yes,
Every
ma'am.
one of you. Yeah, or maybe you want to research, you can do that. So LGBTQ basically is, there are a lot of things. So now people have started calling it LGBTQA plus. So plus means there are other people who are now coming in open and they are talking about it, right? So lesbians are there, right? Then gays are there, then bisexuals are there, right? Ts, transgenders are there. So I'm not sure whether you understand the difference between transgenders and the people who are born as eunuchs, right? Then there are asexual people, And then there are plus, which is QA. QA is basically everybody else who wants to come and fall into this category. So now, what do you think? What kind of difficulties do these people face when they come and join the organization?
Judgment, ma'am.
Absolutely. So prejudices and judgments from everybody else. What else?
Getting along with
Abuse
Getting
also,
along
ma'am.
with,
other people.
yeah, getting along with other people. Why? Because
Because
other people don't accept them.
don't accept them.
So now suppose you have a child at home and you know that your child's best friend is a gay, right? Will you allow your child to be playing with that person? Somewhere you will also have some judgments and prejudices, right? You means I'm not talking about one person. I'm just saying in general, we already have these biases fixed in our thing. कि मेरा बेटा उसकी संगत में जाएगा, then this person will also become like that. But it's not the case, right? And why we talk about such prejudices, why we talk about such judgments is because we don't understand who these people are, why they become what they are. We don't understand that from very old Vedas that we have, all the scriptures, at least the Hindu scriptures, everybody everywhere has spoken about it, right? It's our Lord Shiva in itself is called, right,
Ardhanarishwar.
Ardhanarishwar, right? So why do we call him Ardhanarishwar? Because he is representing that third gender as well,
Yes.
right? So when it is coming from that old history, we have such a beautiful history which talks and accept these people. Then why suddenly in the modern India we are not able to give them that kind of an acceptance? Maybe because there are too many who are coming now out in open. Maybe because we don't really study with them in our school and colleges. We don't allow them to come out during that time, and hence there is a differentiation always because we are never taught how to take care of people's mindset, how to behave with them. Our behavior has to be corrected when we are around these people. And then what happens when we are working together in an organization? All of this creates an impact out there. What impact it creates? It brings a lot of negativity into the system. It brings a lot of judgment and bias culture into the system. And whenever we have negativity and biased culture in an organization, what is the impact overall? Productivity and profitability would be very, very less. There would be chances that the companies are not very creative. And I'll show you the facts and data about it today so that you can understand that when we hire people from diverse background, we can actually increase a lot of things, not just in the words, not just in our behaviors, but also in profitability. Right? So this is how things are all about, I mean, about this LGBTQ as well. Then comes the third gender, which is male, female, and transgender. Now, what are the problems they face when they are in the organization, other than judgments and biases and behavior of people? Very small infrastructural problems they face, right? So, infrastructure problems for people with disabilities, that there is, if somebody is using wheelchair and you don't have a ramp properly created or built in the organization building, that person will never be able to come to the office. Right? So that has to be taken care of. So these are called infrastructural changes that needs to be created in the organization. Then, if the person is a transgender, you don't know whether this person comes into the category of a male or a female. So they usually need a different kind of a bathroom altogether for their utilities, right? So what kind of washrooms or what kind of restroom facilities they have to use? The organization will have to create that thing in the complete capacity. They cannot allow their employees that because you have just joined the organization, we have two categories of restrooms, so just join that. So these are very basic and fundamental changes that needs to be there in the organization for the true inclusion to happen in the organization. And that's when we become proper and complete HR, when we talk about all these differences and create that kind of an infrastructural changes in the organization as well. Right? So variety of different perspective is all about different kind of perspectives altogether. Then आता है increase creativity. Now, how do you feel that different people come with different kinds of creativity? They can bring a lot of new creativity into the system. Why do you think that happens?
Because of the previous one, different perspectives. So if you
Correct.
the people from different societies, different background, we have got different increased creativity.
Absolutely. Because every culture, every region, religion, the kind of places that we come from, we have faced different difficulties. And to overcome those difficulties, we might have ourselves gotten into a different kind of problem solving. So that problem solving brings a lot of different or new perspective towards creativity as well into the system. And that's why when we hire diversified workforce, we hire different increased creativity as well into the organization. Good. So next is higher innovation. Again, very much related with creativity. So innovation is when you create, when you have something in your brain, new idea that can be developed into something really, really good. Whether it can be patents, it can be trademarks for the organization, new products, changes in the products, how, the way we are selling them. It can be any kind of innovation. Right. So this is what we bring in the organization when we come from totally different backgrounds. Imagine now you have a group of 6, 7 people in an organization, and all these 6, 7 people come from totally different backgrounds altogether, whether religious way, whether through religion or demographically, through age group. Some people bring more experience, some people bring less experience, maybe because they are differently able, maybe because some of them are from different sexual orientation. Now 7, 6, 7 people putting their thoughts together for one problem, right? So you will have, when you are brainstorming with such a group, you will have such variety of ideas coming in. And with such variety of ideas, you are getting so many different solutions to your problem. And that's when innovation really happens in the organization. Right? Then have faster problem solving. Again, related with all this, I'm already spoken about it, that solutions would be creative and different kind of solutions altogether. Now, how better decision making will happen? Why do we have people coming from different backgrounds bringing different, better decision making?
Ma'am, different classes has a different way of dealing with the problem. So every class in which a person is brought up, so they have a solution or approach towards that problem solving, that how to approach through minimize effort and to get a effective solution. So probably like different backgrounds of upbringing may play a role towards tackling a problem.
Right? Correct? So when
Some
we are,
experiences also matter in this better decision making.
sorry, what matters?
Ma'am, experience also.
Yes, experience also in decision making. So people, when we create teams in the organization, we should always create a balance between people who are more experienced, have a lot of subject matter expert. Maybe they do not have that fancy degrees to support, but they have seen all the problems of the real life world in the organization. So when you create such teams, such groups in the organization, there are chances that the new fresh blood and the old blood comes together and start taking decisions which are much faster, because they are based on the latest tools and technologies, and they are also based on the experience and subject matter expertise that somebody else has, right? So this is how the collaboration happens, and that's when better decision making starts happening in the organization. Great. Next is increased profits. So now how it is impacting profits?
Because the previous parameters lead to higher productivity, that will in
Yeah.
turn result in profits.
Right. Not just the previous one, the upcoming ones also. Like, We have not spoken about employee engagement, turnovers, and all that. Everything has a direct impact on the profitability in the company, right? So very well said that with the higher the interest rate of mine is increased to work in the organization, mine would be the higher productivity. And when I am putting my 100% productivity and the organization is ensuring that inclusiveness is there. When inclusiveness is there, the employee satisfaction and people happiness is really, really much high. So their emotional quotient, their spiritual quotient, and their happiness quotient, everything is really, really on a higher side. That's when profit starts increasing and company starts looking at their differences as well. Then higher employee engagement. So what do you think employee engagement is about? Some of you are already working in the organizations, corporates. So what do you think? What employee engagement activities you've done?
मैम एम्प्लॉयर एंगेजमेंट मींस मैम जैसे कि आप ये कह लो कि एम्प्लॉय एंगेजमेंट मतलब कि अगर आपको प्रॉब्लम है तो आप उसके सामने खुल के वो चीज बोल पाओ, सामने वाले के सामने अपनी बात रख पाओ, जो चीज आप चैलेंजेस फेस कर रहे हो। अगर जब तक वो एंगेजमेंट नहीं होगी ऑर्गेनाइजेशन में, तब तक तो पॉसिबिलिटीज नहीं है कि आप हायर एम्प्लॉयमेंट एंगेज कर पाओ।
Yeah, that is also another perspective. But employee engagement is about, suppose हम 9 घंटे काम कर रहे हैं ऑफिस पे, right? Generally our office hours that we work is 9 hours, 8-9 hours, right? When you are working in an organization for 9 hours, engagement is that at least for 5-6 hours, in those 9 hours you are fully engaged into the work, into creating something creative for the organization. You're not sitting idle, your mind is not really sitting idle, you're not talking and gossiping in the organization, you're participating. So that becomes higher when we hire people from diversified work culture, different backgrounds altogether. Why and how is purely because the policies talk like that. When we create HR policies, we create such beautiful policies for DNI so that people can be heard anytime, whenever they want to. And they see that my work is being appraised, my work is being given approval, my work is being given applaud by my seniors, because no matter what background I am coming from. So their engagement to the organization becomes much, much higher and much, much beneficial, right? There was a survey which was done by one of the organization for world's 100 top companies. They found out that 100 top companies also do not have 100% employees engaged into the system. Only 57% of people were engaged fully with the organization in terms of their loyalty, in terms of value addition, in terms of whatever they can really do for the organization. So 57% in 100 top companies is a very less percentage. Imagine अभी ये companies 100 top companies हैं. If the employees will become much more engaged, maybe 70%, 75% also, then also these organizations can do really, really much better things. Right? So this is how the impact is being measured and compared to when we talk about employee engagement. Now in HR, employee engagement activities can be so many. Obviously, one is your job description. जब भी आपका हम job description देखते हैं, it should be written so well that people understand that what I am supposed to do in the organization. My role clarity is very much there. I am being paid this much, and I know my pay parity is also there. So pay parity is whether I am being given equal amount of pay as the other employees in the organization who are in the similar category. Same qualification, same background, similar experience. Everything is very much similar. So when all these things happen, unconsciously and consciously, I start putting in my best efforts for the organization because I know organization is taking good care of me. That's when it becomes highly engaged employee. Right? Then आता है reduced employee turnover. So employee turnover, basically we talk about, we call it attrition. Also, it means that number of people leaving in the organization in 1 year. Right? So a lot of people leave the organizations every year, and everybody gives different reasons. Some say I'm leaving for personal reasons, some says for career development, for everything else. but very less percentage of people actually share the reasons why they're leaving the organizations, right? So what a lot of researches have been done in this area, and many good researchers found out that because of this problem of diversity and inclusion and equity in the organization, maximum number of people actually leave because they are not happy, they're not satisfied, they're not content. Maybe it's because of the pay gaps. Maybe it's because of the discrimination that the manager brings. Maybe it is because of different kind of judgments or biases being passed out by different people in the team. It can be anything. And trust me, because we are in HR, I've been managing HR for so many years. I've never heard during an exit interview somebody really sharing the experiences. उनको fear रहता है कि if I share this experience right now, my full and final will not be paid. My final salary will not be given to me. So just in order to get that salary or to have good relationship with the organization, they generally don't share the concrete reasons. Right. So once you start taking care of these particular segment, then obviously the turnover reduces and people start enjoying whatever time period they are working in the organization. Then better company reputation, of course, directly link hai. If you're really putting in, that's why you will see anywhere you go on LinkedIn today, people are talking about diversity, inclusion, and equity. Why they are talking about it? Because it has become a very, very big agenda for all the companies across the world to showcase that they are really, really willing to hire people from different backgrounds altogether. अभी तक तो ये लड़ाई चल रही है कि वुमेन और मेन को एक ऐसी सैलरी नहीं मिलती है. So imagine we just have the fight between two genders right now. Now transgenders are also joining the organizational things. अभी थर्ड जेंडर भी आ गया है तो कैसे organization should ensure that they are not having those biases when somebody is putting in their effort. They have the similar kind of skill set. People are happy working in the organization, but still you're not paying them really equally amount of salaries, right? Are you paying your employee's salary only on the basis of because it's a male and a male member has a privilege that they can go for smoking breaks with the bosses, or they can go and enjoy after office drinking sessions with the senior people? They can go out for late nights engagements with their bosses everywhere. So purely on this basis also a lot of problems happens in the organization. And that is the reason why women are being paid little less because they don't get too much of involved after office hours things because they have the responsibility at home also. Right? So that's why a very big differentiation. When companies start removing these kind of problems, then what happens? Their reputation starts increased in the market. People start looking up to these organizations. For example, I'll tell you in 2016-17 onwards, Vodafone started a drive that they wanted to bring in more diversified workforce in the organization. So they deliberately started hiring people from different backgrounds altogether, especially more women workforce, because they realized overall in India, the percentage of women is much, much lesser. The ratio was approximately 80 to 18%. So 82% males were working and only 12% women were working in the organization. So imagine the gaps are such high. When gaps are such high, you need to really do something so that you can remove those discriminations which is being shown to the world. Whereas, because they compare it with Airtel and Jio, they had much better diversified workforce than Vodafone. So from 2016-17 onwards, they started deliberately and they call it women hiring drive. Different kind of names were given to it also, and that's when they saw a lot of changes after that. So now the workforce differentiation is reduced a little bit. Again, it is not 50-50, which it is how supposed to be, but it's really, really better than what it was before. Similarly, many other organizations, there are so many examples I can give for organizations, right? In MSME sector also, when we work with organization, we always see that women workforce is really less. And when even when they want to join and they want to go higher up the grade, they are not allowed to. Purely because पहले ही hiring के time पर ही most of the problems starts coming in. हमारा पहला क्वेश्चन क्या होता है if we are hiring, मतलब not mine but generally in HR what people ask question is अगर रवि जी आए हैं इंटरव्यू के लिए और सुमन आई है इंटरव्यू के लिए एक साथ एक ही पोजीशन के लिए, सो हम रवि जी से कभी नहीं पूछेंगे कि when are you getting married or how when are you planning to have kids, but from Suman HR will also ask this question when are you planning to get married अगर उनकी एज 25-26 साल की है and she is not
Right,
married
ma'am.
already, right? And we also ask this question, I mean the audacity देखिए आप कि आप किसी से ये भी पूछ रहे हैं सवाल कि when are you having kids? It has
Exactly,
nothing to
that
do
has
with how
happened.
you are going to.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That
and this happens
happened
very
recently. Yes.
often.
And just after the 2 months of marriage, I was asked by the two employers where I just applied. So that was kind of embarrassing that how they can ask such personal questions. So, like it was an open question from a male HR actually.
Yeah. So imagine when people in human resource are bringing such kind of questions and they don't do it deliberately. उनके ऊपर भी pressure होता है because they are also employees
Right.
in the organization, right? We are actually putting such a big prejudice, such a big bias only when at the time of entry also. Imagine when that person is inside the organization, फिर कितने सारे biases होंगे. So many problems we start facing. Right. So slowly, organizations all across the world, it has actually, like I said, it has become a very big agenda in last 3-4 years, and people have actually started noticing the difference that companies are putting in. अभी भी बहुत कुछ है करने के लिए, but still, at least when companies start putting efforts, they start looking in कि चलो changes आने शुरू हो गए, so things will go better the future. Now this male-female लड़ाई has been going on, I don't know, from so many years. Years in the sense जब हमारी पहली there was a lady who used to go out to teach. She was one of the freedom fighters also, and she was the first lady who started teaching students. And
Savitri
when
Bai Phule, ma'am.
yes, Savitribai Phule, correct. So when she started going out and teaching, वहां पर भी उनका भी कितना ज्यादा वो हुआ था. People started abusing her. People started actually physically abusing her also. So she faced all those difficulties, but her name is still there in the history as the first woman who started going out and teaching. Right? Imagine she hardly used to wear short skirts and all those things, all the discrimination that we talk about today. But still, she put in all the efforts. और ऐसे ही लेडीज है जिनकी वजह से आई मीन ऐसे ही वुमेन वर्कफोर्स है जिनकी वजह से whatever changes we can see in the system has come because of that. So this is how small efforts can create bigger impacts also, and we keep talking about these bigger impacts as well. Then आता है improved hiring result. So when you don't face that discrimination, आपके hiring result becomes better. I'll tell you the solution also, how we can actually remove all these problems that we are talking about. Because you will say कि अभी तो हम problems की बात कर रहे हैं, we're not giving solutions. So I'll give you 100% good solutions also that we have implemented, and not just we. There are other HR people or good organizations also who have started implementing and have started seeing the changes as well. Right, so these are benefits. Now these are certain researches that I wanted to show. Glassdoor is one of the organization. I'm sure if you're aware about it. Glassdoor is also a platform similar to Twitter or Facebook or Instagram. But what they allow is they allow people to share reviews about the organization freely without having any discrimination. So Glassdoor did a research because a lot of people are there on Glassdoor platform as well. So they said that 67% of people, of job seekers, said a diverse workforce is important than considering job offers. Right? So it's very important when you are actually applying for the job, you need to see what kind of diverse workforce that we are bringing in. अगर आपके पास एक पोजीशन के लिए CVs आए हैं, resumes you have collected, so you need to see how many of them are really good women I can bring into the organization, whether people from different kind of backgrounds also are coming into the things and they can bring different kind of value addition to my system. For sure, my company will become much better. Right? So that perspective has to be there. Then Josh Pershin again do a lot of research. So he shows the research that inclusive companies are 1.7 times more likely to be the innovation leaders in their market. right? And these are all practical researches which is being done from the data given by the organizations. Then BCG is again one of the largest companies in the world who does a lot of researches, whether it is researches on salary surveys, it is happiness surveys, employee satisfaction surveys. So they keep conducting different kind of surveys altogether. This is how they collect data and information and utilize it for the organization. Then BCG shows that companies that have more diverse management teams have 19% higher revenue. Imagine 19% higher revenues than the organizations who are not using it is a very, very high percentage. And I'm not sure why some companies are not really able to see this kind of changes that is happening now. Right? Similar company is McKinsey. McKinsey shows that racially and ethnically diverse companies outperform industry norms by 35%. Right? So you can see all this research talks about huge big percentages. So the changes that we are looking in can really be very, very important culturally as well as for the organization, for the people to change their behavior and bring in different kind of workforce altogether. Now, what can be done as a solution for DNY to really be applicable in the organization is to start with hiring. When we hire people from diverse backgrounds, we increase incidents and best practices, right? We increase incidents means जब आपके पास data होगा that we have hired people from different backgrounds altogether, people who are from different kind of age groups, people who are from different kind of religions, and they are still working together in the best way in the organization, then we can actually show that things are changing. Then welcome diversity and inclusion. सबसे पहले कल्चर आपका जो ऑर्गेनाइजेशन का आपको बनाना है, not just infrastructure of ways, how the peoples are behaving, how people have to do that. So conducting sensitivity training on and off, very importantly, conducting gender sensitivity trainings as well. One is emotional sensitivity, behavioral sensitivity, one is gender sensitivity, and then conducting training for unconscious biases. So I'll give you a very brief presentation also on unconscious biases. I'll show you and talk about it today as well. Unconscious bias in HR is very important to understand from various perspectives, not just for D&I, also at the time of hiring, how to remove them, at the time of promotions and transfer and appraisal, how to remove them. When we are selecting somebody for better training and growth in the organization, how we can remove all these barriers. It's very important to understand those unconscious bias and work towards it as a human being. Now, these are actionable strategies that most organizations have started using. So, diversity sourcing. सबसे important is that you start bringing people from different resource group altogether. So, when you are hiring, generally hiring में HR में हम क्या करते हैं? We do Boolean search strings. We create Boolean search strings. So, Boolean search strings are very similar to if you have studied a little bit of computer programming. वहां पर यूज होता है इसको and or लगा के strings बनाना. So those strings really help find out good people who are related to your industry in the organization, in the market. So when you actually are using Boolean search strings, you can use things like Black, Latino, disabilities, women in IT or LGBTQ. Specifically, अगर आप ये words डाल के search शुरू करते हैं, so then there are chances that the CVs or the resumes that you are being showcased by different, maybe from LinkedIn, maybe from job portals, maybe from wherever you are hiring, then there are chances that you will be shown specifically people. So, for example, you're working in an IT industry, right? अब IT में you will see programming में या development में बहुत कम ladies हैं. There are very less women workforce even now. And they don't choose it purely because travel बहुत हो जाता है. कभी client side पे जाना पड़ता है. इंडिया के बाहर जाना पड़ सकता है. Number of hours is little higher sometimes because you're working for US and UK clients more in service oriented companies. तो वहाँ पर late nights बहुत होते हैं. So you have to work different hours altogether. So women not choose and create an career out of it. But last 5-7 years, I've seen a lot of changes. A lot of women workers have started joining in. So if you want to increase a diverse workforce to work in your company, what you can do is you can start searching with a woman on IT, Boolean search string also, along with the other search strings. So then you can source better candidates for your chances are similar background मिलेंगे because उन्होंने obviously पढ़ाई तो करी हुई होगी तभी they are women in IT. एक्सपीरियंस भी होगा, एक्सपोजर होगा. एक ड्रॉबैक होता है सिर्फ कि करियर ब्रेक हो जाता है शायद. सो इफ वुमेन आर वर्क ऑलरेडी मैरिड एंड दे हैव किड्स तो उनका 1-2 साल का या 6 महीने का whatever time period they have taken a break, so that break will also show. Right? So most of the organization do not hire क्योंकि उनको maternity benefit नहीं देना होता, ये भी एक रीजन है. दूसरा रीजन ये है कि उनको लगता है ब्रेक हो गया है, so that women will always be, if somebody has a child they will always be more considered towards their family, छुट्टियां ज्यादा लेंगे, all those things. So, a lot of biases are there. So to remove that, we need to do diversity sourcing. Right? Then second is diversity focused job fairs. Now many organizations have started really doing this particular thing. So they create job fairs where they invite people from every background, no matter they are different. Some army people also being included, some defense people also being included, people from remote areas or tier 3, tier 4 cities, people from different MBA institutes or engineering institutes. हम generally top 20 की बात करते रहते हैं. There are so many institutions and some institutions are really good. It's not necessary that you have to hire from the top 10 or top 20 ones. So वो differentiation भी आता है diverse workforce के अंदर. Then people from different एज ग्रुप्स. एज ग्रुप का बायस के बारे में तो हमने बात ही नहीं किया है. इट्स अ वेरी अगेन ह्यूज थिंग इन द माइंड. आई विल टेक यू थ्रू दैट अनकॉन्शियस बायस थिंग एंड देन यू विल रियलाइज ऑन अ डे टू डे बेसिस इतने सारे अनकॉन्शियस बायस है जो हम प्रैक्टिस करते हैं एंड वी डोंट इवन नो अबाउट इट. इतना सबकॉन्शियसली हो जाता है बिकॉज आवर माइंड इज फिल्ड सिंस द चाइल्डहुड with all these biases that we don't even realize कि ये bias रह गया है. Right? So diversity focused job fairs again brings a lot of good practice for the organizations to have. It can really open up different kind of, because जब आपके table पर अलग-अलग resumes आएंगे different backgrounds से all together, then obviously you will give them a chance to work and be there in the organization if their skill set is really good. Then university graduate school diversity associations, बहुत सारे इंडिया में भी now it's more about generally outside India, but many universities in India has also started now diversity associations. The diversity association really looks after people, especially from LGBTQ, transgender, people with differently abled things, so that these can be included in the workforce. So they can really kind of they create different portals, job for things for especially these people, so that you can hire. It can help organization in hiring better people. Fourth actionable strategy है employee referrals. So employee referrals is you are working in an organization, you know somebody who is really good at skills, and because it's your referee, you don't generally see उनकी कोई बुराई है या कहाँ से किस बैकग्राउंड से आ रहे हैं या किस तरीके का इंसान है. You generally refer them to the organization because you know the organization also well, you know the work culture is well, and you know the person will also be bringing good skill set into the organization. So referrals work really, really wonderful when you have to hire people from different diversified backgrounds. Right? Maybe some of your family, some of your friends, people you know, they have very good skill set, and you think that this person can come into this organization and can stay longer, can bring differentiation to the organization's culture. Then why not hire them from there? Right? Understood? Any questions so far? Okay, I'm assuming no questions. So moving ahead, how to hire. Now, when we are hiring people from diverse background, what needs to be done as an organization? So create a diverse interview panel. आपका जो interview panel है, it should also have at least one woman, a representative from different culture altogether. इसको देखकर ही लग रहा हो कि yes, this person is little different from others, but yes, it's a part of the interview panel. Obviously, you just can't keep somebody just like that, just to showcase. somebody with good skill set as well is required. So you're not really compromising on the skill set and the competencies required to do that job, but try and bring in that diverse interview panel, because when you create that structure with interview panel, the people who are attending the interview also gets impressed. Ki, wow, people have different women in the group, men also are there, men from different backgrounds, visibly shown, all those things. So it's very important that diverse interview panels are always there. Second is diversity training for recruiters. Very important. And when we talk about diversity training, we also talk about unconscious bias for recruiters as well. So when you have unconscious bias coming into the picture, you really looks after the people in terms of what they are bringing to the organization. Right, just give me 1 second. I'll just take out that slide for you for unconscious biases. So just give me. Okay. So you can see the PPT, right? Right? You can see that? Okay. So now breaking down unconscious biases is what? When we are talking about unconscious biases, generally these are the biases we have in our mind whenever we are going out, whenever we are meeting different kind of people all together. So this is how our brain works. How our brain works is with unconscious thoughts. We don't realize what are we bringing into the system, right? We don't know what kind of how the information has to be processed, how the information and the data that is there has to be judged properly. Like you all said, that at some point in time we have faced discrimination, we have faced judgments, right? I want to know from all of you, Vaise, by the way, what kind of do you think that ever in your lifetime so far you have faced any kind of discrimination? Before we go ahead, then I will relate your example with these. Any kind of, it can be any unconscious bias, any discrimination on the basis of anything that makes you different. So let's hear from you. So let's start with Ravi Chandranji. You don't have to feel shy. We all face.
I'll come little later.
Okay. Suman, you want to talk about? Though you've already spoken about it, but yeah, you want to say it again?
Yes, ma'am, about the last organization I was working with. So all over there, most of the girls in the admin department were unmarried. So when I was married, so I was judged on the basis that I won't be able to give extra hours to the organization. So I was fired from that organization on the basis that I may plan a baby or I may not be able to work or even after the office hours, without any getting after firing. This was a reason, anything that was given to us, that I was
Hmm.
not competent on the part that I may have a family starting very sooner, since it's been a year into marriage, and I won't be able to give much to the organization if the schedule is stretched and overworking hours are demanded from the organization. And I was putting my family as a priority, so this was the reason to fire me from the organization. So I think that was a kind of discrimination between a married and
True.
unmarried women of the same gender that was
Absolutely.
done at that time. So it
Not
was
just
expected.
between married and unmarried women, I think it is between a man and a woman as well. Right? We
Yes,
don't
this is
ask married men whether you are going to have
first
a
time that
baby.
has it
Yeah.
happened to me first time, ma'am. So that was a kind of discrimination I faced, because when you work for the same hours and then you are expected to work extra hours, uh, you have to sacrifice some family important like engagements also that was demanded, and I
True.
don't know what happened. Like that, I felt discrimination. I don't think so. I don't know if it is right or not, but
That's
that.
correct. Yeah. It's one of the discrimination for sure. Yes. Okay. Sushma ji, you want to say something? You've been very quiet today.
Ma'am,
Yeah.
may
Yes, yes. Please do that, Ravi ji.
my previous organization in Chennai, uh, one of my friend faced that discrimination. He's a
Mm-hmm.
very good researcher, has got a lot of publications and all. But in spite of that, his appeal and look, he was from a village background, rural background. So get along that much with other the majority workforce. So for that, no people were, no many friends were there in our organization, my previous organization. So because of
Mm-hmm.
that, too, he was forced to leave the organization indirectly by the
Oh.
force,
Mhm.
not the employers. So this happened, and we later faced that he was a very good resource. We missed that.
Absolutely. Yeah. Good. Yeah. Again, that's an unconscious bias, right? We'll come to that. Which bias was that? Anjan ji, you have something to share? You're there, Anjan? Can you hear me? Okay. So let's move ahead. Um, how our brain works when unconscious bias happens. So like first is unconscious thoughts. It comes because we are not prepared to handle them. Nobody has actually taught us how to ensure that in your subconscious mind all the things that we have been putting in, like this particular discrimination that people are from rural background, women who are married, unmarried, people who have more experience should not be there in the company because company is young and they need fresh blood, different kind of things. We are not given proper training on these things, and that's why these unconscious thoughts comes into our mind. Then emotions and reactions. Now we have feelings of anger, frustration, fear, which increases the intensity of unconscious bias. Anything new that is there in the organization, anything new that happens around us brings totally different kind of fears for us. And that's when we have higher increase of biases happening. Then the power of context. Power of context talks about how different things reinforces such unconscious biases, right? For example, even we don't realize that organizations who are showing us advertisements every day in and out for so many products are actually using those unconscious bias for our buying decisions every time when we go out in the market, and we don't even realize that. Then fourth is importance of awareness. If we are more aware towards this unconscious bias, then obviously our mind will ensure at the time of taking a decision for anything, whether it is for buying, for taking up a job, for hiring somebody in the organization, for helping somebody, what happens is that we consider alternative viewpoints always. So you have to train your brain to understand those biases and then work towards it. So these are the biases that we are going to talk about today. Again, your cameras are off, so I'm not sure whether you guys are hearing or not. So like Sushma and Anjan is gone. Suman and Ravi Chandran are also gone, so I'm not sure who I'm teaching.
Ma'am, we are here only.
Yeah, so just keep saying that you're here. Yes. It gets difficult to teach, the blank spaces, the blank screens. Okay, so the biases are now very important to understand, right? Not just from the HR perspective, but anywhere else. When you are in the people management thing, especially, even if you're a teacher, you are in training and development, you are in the profession where you are hiring different kind of people, you are a part of the panel, you are making changes in the people's life, you have that kind of a power in terms of your personal life as well as professional life. So these biases are very important to understand and try and remove. As a human being, when we start trying, when I first read about it during my MBA days, which is approximately 17, 18 years back, I ensured that whenever I join an organization, I will try and not bring these things. And trust me, it took a lot of efforts. I ensured every time I was taking a decision to hire somebody for the promotions, and thankfully I was in a leadership position, so always was in a capacity where I can take a decision, and that decision could create a difference in the organization. So after studying these biases, I tried and improved, and today I'm 100% sure that I don't use any of these biases ever, even in personal life, professional life, anywhere. And it took a lot of training. It just did not come automatically. So maybe for all of you also, it will not happen overnight. You'll have to put that conscious decision. You have to put your efforts into taking those decisions on daily basis. So let's understand that affinity bias. Affinity bias talks about when we favor people or group because we have similar hobbies, backgrounds, experiences. Very common example. He's from my village, he's from my city, he stays next to my building. I know him very well. He's from my hobby classes, similar background. Even if you don't know this person, similar background brings that kind of an unconscious bias. So when we are hiring, we see, oh, acha, you are from that particular village. My parents were also from that village. So automatically, up your, that pendulum is towards that person automatically. And we don't even realize. We then don't think of the skill set. We don't think of the meritocracy that this person brings in the company, right? So this is a very common bias that happens. And I'm sure all of us have done it so many times in our lifetime. Similarity bias, second. The tendency to prefer people who are similar to us in terms of backgrounds, interests, or values. Quite similar to affinity bias, but different is there that, here the values are also similar, right? That our interests and values match with each other so much that I'm automatically considering this person for the role, for the promotion, for the transfer that's to be done, needs to be done, all those things. So, for example, a very basic example is two people are there in the group. You have to hire amongst those two. One person, you don't have any information about their background and all those things, you don't know the value system and all. The other person, you know a little bit about their value system. So, for sure, your bias would be towards the person you know the background, interest, and values of. Right? It comes automatically. You don't really have to think about it. And when we do that, there is nothing wrong actually. When you see in that perspective, because you know somebody, so you know a little bit more information about that. But what is wrong here is that we are disregarding a lot of other information about the other persons. We are really letting go of the chances, like, Raviji shared an example. We let go of a completely good resource purely because we knew their backgrounds. Right? We didn't know that what kind of good research paper this person can publish in the coming days. Whether the teaching method of this person is really good or not. The organizations, the institutions do not consider these things. And that's when they become bigger biases. Right? Then आता है stereotypes. Stereotype again is very, very common. We do almost every day. Very common one is Biharis ज़्यादा IAS officer बनते हैं, right? So that accent of Biharis, we always keep talking about. Then about police force. That police force takes bribes. Every police officer you see, I don't want to go complain because they'll take bribe. they will try and bring me into this problem. So ये common, बहुत common stereotypes हैं. Why it has been going, even if you do not have a direct experience, but because we have heard so many things, we saw so many movies, we have seen so many cultural during our upbringing, that all these biases have now taken a space in our subconscious minds. So when in need, suppose you need a police officer for something, even if it is not directly linked to a theft or any problem that you're in, but the first question is कि यार वो पैसा ले लेगा, that person will ask for bribe without even thinking, and we don't even see that there are the police force is working so fine for our safety and security. I'm sure out of 100%, there would be at least 30-40% who are doing good job without even taking briberies. But what happens is, because of this stereotypes bias, we always think about same traits and behavior for everybody. We generalize so much for them, right? Then next आता है conformity bias. Conformity bias talks about the tendency to conform to the norms and values of one's reference group. So one's reference group matlab you are part of some groups, and because you understand their norms and values, so become very conform to their biases, right? When in terms of you are hiring them or giving them promotion in the group. For example, in organization, I'll give you an example. Because this person goes for a cigarette break with the bosses, so the bosses have a direct interaction with this person. Though this person is not directly reporting into this, but because they take smoking breaks together, and it's a male, it's not a female, because generally females do not really tend to smoke that much as male population. So this conformity bias comes from there, because this person goes out more for drinking after the office hours, or take smoking breaks, or have common interest. For example, he plays in the same group, in the same club. I meet them often, I see them often, and the more I see this person, the more I am biased towards this automatically when it comes to choosing from a person I don't know much and I know. Right? So this is what conformity bias is. फिर है very common one, beauty bias. ये हम सब ने face किया हुआ है everywhere. हमारा रंग, somebody is fair, somebody is not that fair, dark complexion, not British complexion, your beauty, your intelligence, your honesty, all these things. So all these things comes as a beauty bias. It is named as beauty bias also because we tend to associate with such people. Very, very common example, I tell you. For India, it's a very common. You pick up any newspaper on a Sunday, जहाँ पर matrimonial ads आते हैं. Read any matrimonial ad, and you will see all the families are looking for fair, good-looking, homely girls. These three qualities are always there, right? And then afterward, they will say, we will prefer a woman working, our boy is working in this organization. But these three words are so common. Trust me, I actually checked it myself once when I was telling all these things to my son. So I told him that, pick up this newspaper and see, and everywhere, homely, beautiful, and good looking. Just imagine if everybody is looking for a fair, homely, and beautiful girl, what will happen to the others? Right? So that's a very common beauty bias that we have. Now, again, when we go into the organization, again, this happens. Now, you have a very beautiful face in front of you, whether a male or a female, it doesn't matter. A beautiful face can be anyone, any gender. And you have somebody who's not that good looking in terms of their looks only, right? We're not even looking at their skill set right now. Trust me, your pendulum will again be going towards the person who is looking better than the other one. And it's again very common thing. We don't train our mind to actually get away from these particular biases. Then halo effect. Halo effect is also very similar to stereotyping, but how it difference is that it talks about the tendency to overgeneralize positive traits. So in stereotypes, we keep looking at negative traits more. In halo effect, we keep looking at positive traits more. So for example, halo is what? Generally, halo is called that thing जो Jesus के ऊपर आपको दिखाई देता है. Angels के ऊपर हम दिखाते हैं circle that really is there. Right? So halo effect talks about कि आप किसी की पॉजिटिविटी इतनी ज्यादा आपको अच्छी लगने लग जाती है that you become very biased towards this person, right? Or towards that group. So this becomes again a bias. Then out-group homogeneity bias. Out-group homogeneity bias says when we pick up a tendency to view members of a group we do not belong to or more similar to each other than they really are. Which means we keep looking at certain similarities in the groups that we form into the organization as well. For example, even if you're working in an organization, I'm sure you will pick up a group whose language is much more similar to yours so that you can chat even after office hours or within office hours. You can have lunches or dinners with this group. So, this is the again out group homogeneity bias that brings a lot of biasness into the system. These are more. Attribution bias. Attribution bias talks about overemphasis dispositional explanations for behavior rather than situational explanations. So we keep looking at the behavioral then situation. In this situation, this person should be supposed to work like that. But we don't look into those things. What we start looking at is their attributes. That ये तो हमेशा ही ऐसे ही करता है. So this is one statement that goes कि this person always behaves like that. Is a very common bias that we see. We don't see that in different situations this person might behave or might show a different reaction, but it doesn't really go that way. Then gender bias, we all know about it. We've already spoken about it, consciously or unconsciously. It comes everywhere, no matter where you are, no matter what we are talking about. Then perception bias. Perception bias it talks about how we interpret information in a way that concept our preconceptions and stereotypes. For example, we create a different kind of perception for a group or for a specific part of the society. Even if we are looking at a reality, a situation that is happening in front of you, right? But our perspective to see that reality is little different from other person. So, for example, even if when we are discussing about these biases, I am sure the examples that is going out in your mind for Raviji would be different, for Suman it would be different, if Sushma and Anjan would be hearing, then for them also it could be different. All four of you have faced different kind of discrimination or all of these biases on the perception and perspective that you have ever created, right? And we keep talking about that. So, for example, a Suman has faced a lot of problems in organization from a perspective of being a married woman, right? Suddenly, right? So those perceptions differs. So her perception is there that most of the HRs are like that, right? Automatically, it will come. I'm not saying ki ho gaya hai, but there are chances that that perception has already been created in the mind, right? Ravi Chandran might have good experience with HR, so he may not be thinking from that perspective for HR, right? He might be thinking ki nahi, in my organization, HR did really good job in terms of hiring different people or whatever way they have had to handle situations. So that perception bias comes from how we look into the reality from our experiences, right? Then confirmation. पहले वाला था confirmation, FORM, and this is confirmation bias. So confirmation bias is about the information that we have in our brain as a pre-existing beliefs. Right? Very similar to stereotypes. Because stereotypes में भी यही होता है that we are fed with so many things about different groups, and in confirmation bias is there. So they are differently called for different organizations in different ways, but this is how they have been used interchangeably as a stereotype as well. Then Horn's effect. Horn's effect talks about similar to halo effect. It's just opposite to that. So Horn's effects generally talk about when we overgeneralize negative traits and abilities of people in unrelated areas. Right?
Ma'am, can you give any example to it, like it's Horn's effect?
I'll give you examples also. ये सब examples हैं. Right? Then आता है in group bias. So in group is basically when we favor people who belong to our groups over people who We don't know at all. Again, very similar to, so there are certain biases which are, generally used overchangeably. So similarity bias, affinity bias, and this one, in-group bias, they are very, very similar to each other. Then proximity bias, which is the last one, the tendency to prefer people who are physically closer to us, right? So people who have always remained close in terms of the work that we have done, the way we have handled them in the organization. They have taken more breaks with us in lunch. They have brought different kind of good things for me whenever they go out from the organization. Many such examples for proximity. So people you see much closer in terms of their physical presence, you tend to remember those things. So that's why it becomes proximity bias. Now, these are the examples, how these examples actually creates problems. If you are in courtrooms, if you are in job interviews, or if you are going for a loan application. So from 3 different perspectives, I've tried to bring those examples for you. So job interviews, where what happens? Interviews can form biases based on your appearance, accent, shared interest, and unfair job offers. It leads to unfair job offers. Example, an interview who is also a fan of a certain sports team may give preferential treatment to a candidate who supports same team. Right? Second example is, when you go for an interview, because of your language, right? You tend to know that this person comes from the similar background that I come from. So, for example, if you're from South India, you're talking to people, and from the accent, you can really make it out that the person is from South India. You don't really even consider कि वो Malayalam speaking है, Telugu speaking है, या Tamil speaking है. But because that accent really shows that this person also comes from a background from where you are, so you tend to give your judgment or your decision on the basis of that particular thing, right? ऐसे ही ब्यूटी बायसेस हो सकते हैं जॉब इंटरव्यूज के अंदर, वेरी कॉमन. स्टीरियोटाइप बायसेस हो सकते हैं, वेरी कॉमन. So all these things generally happen. I'll tell you a real life example of this. We were hiring a person for a CA position in an organization. I will not name the organization here. So we just, I was also attending interviews with the senior most leadership team. So one of the girl, her husband was working in a Ministry of External Affairs. So we did not hire that girl purely because her husband was in Ministry of External Affairs. And if, God forbid, something goes wrong with the person in the organization, that person, her husband, might create a problem for us. Without having anything, well, I was really aghast. I was really surprised when the founders actually talk about this, that let's not hire her. Her husband might create a problem somewhere in the future for us, because they were into similar kind of a business where Ministry of External Affairs said they need to take a lot of permissions to work. So imagine something has never happened. They don't know whether this person might create problem or not, just purely on the basis of a proper discrimination they might have faced in the past. And no matter what I said during that interview, it was nearly not really taken into consideration. Right? So these are certain real life examples you will see almost on a daily basis. So for that, you need to really train your mind. अब इसका counter measure क्या है? The second point, if you read that I have written, is how you can really remove that bias and try and do that. So use structured interviews with standardized questions and rating scales to minimize the influence of personal biases on the organization. Right? When you have very structured format of your interview, the questions are really, really put across in a manner, maybe in a questionnaire format. So all the evaluators during the interviews are actually just ticking the marks purely on the basis of the qualities that the person has shown during the interview, and not about the appearance, accent, or shared interest. Then you can have, when you have interview panel, 3 people, even if one is biased, the other 2 will try and give the numbers on the merits and the questions, how they are answered. Right? Then courtrooms. What happens in courtrooms? Again, example is the defendant, who is a person of color, may be more likely to be perceived as guilty based on conscious or unconscious biases. Right? बहुत होता है courtrooms के अंदर भी. I'm sure you must have seen in the movies also. Movies में तो चलो खैर, they show even overboard of these things, but this happens on a daily basis. That if we see For example, outside India, they see if the person is brown or darker skin, they generally tend to see that this person is guilty for sure, right? And it's a very, very common bias, right? In India also, if the person is not really beautiful, ugly looking, or not really have a good facial structure, right, coming from a different background, supposedly from UP and Bihar, you will also feel somewhere कि criminal होगा, right? अगर court में है तो. So somewhere we tend to have a judgment towards these people on the basis of whatever we have heard, the characteristics, the convictions, the sentencing, I mean, the past race and gender. We generally do that. So how we can countermeasure it? Mitigation strategies, again, because you're not in the courtroom, so we're not getting into details of it. Then loan application, if you have really applied ever for the loan, it happens during the loan applications also. We again form biases based on race, gender, and other characteristics. So people are tend to become give loans to people who are more beautiful, have white skin, their credit scores are not really looked into also, even if that person is in comparison with some other. So all these things, these examples I've tried to create so that you can get it's not just in organization, it's everywhere else also. We keep using these biases. Again, a very common bias, I'll tell you. You don't have to feel offended even if you do this. I'm not saying that you'd only do that. Uh, very, very common bias is that suppose you have a person who comes to your home, who collects kachra or who cleans your toilets, right? These people generally, and if they ask for a glass of water or a cup of tea from you, you don't tend to share the same cup of tea, same cup, same glass, same utensils for them. You always keep them separate, right? And it has been there, even if it is for your housemates and people who come and work for us in our household, we always tend to follow this unconscious bias, right? Kuch nahi hoga, even if they are from different caste altogether, different creed, but still we follow these things, right? And again, very common bias, and the similar thing happens in the organization. Imagine now, I'll tell you this again, a real life example. She used to work in my parental house, I mean, my father's place. So she used to come and collect the kachra, and she used to also clean the toilets. And she always used to create a parda. There was always a ghungat on her head. She never used to show us her face because she'll face discrimination, and she was a lady. And she ensured that her child is actually been chosen as one of a very good position in IPS, right? She came with the sweet box for everybody in the household, and trust me, all the houses where she used to pick up that kachra and she used to clean toilets, nobody accepted the mithai also. Even though the son was selected as one of the IPS officer. And imagine now, because of even if the person has been selected on the basis of meritocracy, the skill set that the person has, he or she has become an IPS officer, still will face discrimination purely on the basis of caste. And that is happening in India. You can see every day. Even now, we are seeing those examples, right? So these unconscious biases have created so much of impact in our brain. And when we say, ki, no, this is happening in our personal life, we don't carry it in our professional life, it doesn't happen. When you go into the organization, you again tend to become more prominent, you become more biased towards people who are from similar caste, right? The moment you heard somebody's name, full name, you get to know that it is from a very lower caste, you start behaving differently, indifferently. You become very indifferent, you don't talk to these people, you create a gap, whatever happens, even if you are working in a team, all these biases, and I'm not saying it comes directly, deliberately, but unconsciously it comes. And when it comes unconsciously, again, it is having an impact. So this is impacts of unconscious bias, the same thing that I'm talking about, that when we feel that it is just impacting our personal life and not professional, it's not the case. It's always there. When we carry certain biases, we carry it everywhere within our brains. And our brains functions in a similar manner. So what happens when we go into the organization? It brings unhealthy organizational culture, decreased creativity, people are not happy, loss of revenue, loss of potential human resources, and higher attrition or higher labor turnover rates. So now how do we mitigate unconscious biases in workplaces? Through training and education. I'll again say to just train, and train your people. Sensitivity training, gender sensitivity training, behavioral sensitivity training, conscious bias training. Lot of training has to happen in the organization for everybody from the moment they come on job, onboarding, to whenever they are going into field working with different groups altogether. Then second is objectivity in recruitment and performance evaluation. This is what we were talking about in diversity and inclusion also, that you have to really think what kind of objectivity you can bring. That you are bring transparency in your recruitment process, that you're hiring purely the chart that you create, the form that you create. We call it candidate assessment sheet. When you create these candidate assessment sheet, you need to ensure that everybody is really putting in their comments on the basis of the qualification, experience, skill, and competency, and nothing else. Third is diverse viewpoints of decision making levels. Bring different people all together. Make your decision making team so strong who represents diverse workforce. That's when you can bring real change into the organization. And then fourth is accountability. Make people accountable for their unconscious biases so that they can remove them automatically. Start pinpointing them, start telling them that this is what you are. So that is why we call it conclusion. Step up, speak out, make a difference. So if you are noticing that something is going around, you're noticing that there is an unconscious bias happening, don't keep quiet. Talk about it, open about it, and really make sure that you are bringing that change into the system. Right? With that, let me just continue with diversity and inclusion, and then we finish that slide. Right, so we were talking about diverse interview panel. We've spoken diversity training for recruiters. Again, I have told you on unconscious bias and on sensitivity. Then blind hiring practice. Now, blind hiring practice is becoming very, very evident and very successful technique for using. So, blind hiring technique says that you don't know, you don't see the photograph, you don't see the name, you don't see the culture background at all. You only see the resumes comes in a format for you as a hirer or as a recruiter, in a format where their skill set is mentioned, qualification is mentioned, and their work experience is mentioned. That's all. Not even their genders are mentioned. And on that basis, you select. And when you really are going to meet that person after the selection is being done, then only you get to know whether the person is male or a female, from which background, from which caste, which creed, what ethnicity. You don't get to know anything before that. So that practice is called blind hiring practice. Many organizations have started using it and they are seeing good results. And that is why it is there in the PPT to talk about as a good strategy to avoid any kind of problems. Biases we have already spoken about. Then how can we cultivate inclusive space, right, into the organization? So one is सबसे important is leadership involvement. Just imagine if an organization wants to create a difference, but they do not have a leadership involvement in that. Imagine their upper management is not involved into creating that change, it will never happen. Because somewhere or the other, they will create biases themselves. So it's very important that these 3 points needs to be done, 4 points needs to be done. Ensure diversity at all levels of management. Agar aapka leadership would be involved, then you will ensure that every level of management will have diversified workforce working for you. Even if there are lesser number of people than other culture, caste, creed, but still you have created a bent. Then assign a top executive to lead or sponsor your diversity program. Again, you need to hire. There are very good organizations who have started hiring a diversity director or inclusion director. Such positions are also being created into the organization so that these people can actually become important factor of creating that change in the organization. Their work is like that. So they will be a part of the interview panel to see whether we are actually hiring number of women into the organization or people from different backgrounds into the organizations. So they'll ensure their presence is everywhere where there are chances of biases to happen. Then appoint a chief diversity equality officer. I just said that many organizations have started doing it. They call it different names. Chief of diversity, diversity director, equality officer, chief of equity. Different kind of names are being given. No matter what the title is, but they are expected to perform their job, which is their involvement into ensuring that things are happening in a different manner altogether. Inclusive workforce is the objective or the goal that they have to create. Right? Then fourth point is create a diversity council or committees. जितने different councils or committees होंगे, if you are a very large organization, branches अलग-अलग countries में, cities में है, then it's always beneficial that you have committees and councils who keeps talking to each other about that, okay, what are the new things that we have started in this branch, we started that, in that branch we started that. So all these things keeps happening, right? Discussions and brainstorms. Then second is policies and procedures. Very important policies and programs to be created on diversity and inclusion. You need to have a very separate policy for this particular thing in the organization so that everybody in the organization who joins it, reads it, gives their yes on that and starts implementing that in the organization. Right? It should be a part of the company's value, very importantly. Right? Your mission, the company's mission and vision value should talk about diversity and inclusion now. That what we want to bring, the differences, we want to bring in the difference from bringing different kind of cultural people in the organization, different kind of background of people in the organization. Right? Then create and implement those policies. Very importantly, maximum organization have this basic policy like equal opportunity employment because it's a government policy now. But when even if you call yourself equal opportunity employment, you don't really tend to perform those jobs. On this basis that I just told you, we generally have that. In fact, what happened in the organizations after Modi ji started winning the elections? People started asking this question in the interview. Trust me, one of a very, very senior HR, and I used to respect him so much. He asked one person in the organization that if you are a Modi supporter, I am going to hire you. If you're not, then I'm not going to. So imagine the political level has also started taking the biases now to a different level altogether. Because we prefer somebody, it does not matter. Our political affirmation or our political affiliation should not really have a direct impact on the way that we work in the organization. Right? Then issue diversity and inclusion statement. So when you're creating a policy, anti-discrimination policy, you need to have a statement also which says that the company does not really have give value to anybody who discriminates in the organization, and there is a separate cell for handling such kind of conflicts and issues. And you ensure that such complaints are taken into consideration seriously in the organization, and the council is taking a decision on the people who are actually doing it on and off. Then education and training, I have already spoken about. So offer unconscious bias and sensitivity training is one of the bigger solutions because we human beings tend to understand things when we are trained properly, when we are educated, when it is being given to us. Because unfortunately, हमारे education system में we were never told about these biases or why not to bring in these kind of backgrounds or diversification problems into the system. Then organize diversity and inclusion workshops. So many organizations call separate consultants who have specialization into diversity and inclusion, or they create their own programs to be run in the organization for everybody to attend at least once or twice. Then organize training on teamwork and collaboration. Jitna training teamwork or collaboration pe hoga, there are chances that people tend to look into the teams from the perspective that our work in the organization is to achieve organizational goals, not to look into the personal information of the background, cultural, caste, creed, whatever we are talking about. Then offer conflict resolution education. Again, organization need to have a conflict resolution cell which informs or takes decision on the complaints that comes. Other than that, those education also needs to be given to everybody in the organization. It can be a capsule program, maybe online, that you can register, people can read, know about it, or it can be a offline program where you're calling people in a room and giving training in the batches. Then last is retention and development. So retention and development talks about professional development programs, larger programs. If somebody is getting into leadership position or somebody is getting into an important position, what kind of professional development programs we can take them through so that these guys can actually become integral part of the organization for a longer term. Then offer diversity focused program. Again, you don't know what kind of people are being promoted if you are promoting them purely on the basis of their education qualification and the way they have worked, their productivity and performance. When you start looking into their productivity and performance, you start training them toward diversity focused programs so that they can also adapt to the system of the organization of creating teams, better teams with people coming from different backgrounds. Then create employee resource groups. Again, employee resource groups basically happens when you are creating a group where people can network together so that they can exchange ideas. What can be done so that we can remove these biases into the system, from the system? What can be done to not discriminate against people? When you create certain smaller groups into the entire organization, these people keep coming out with the ideas what can be done so that this does not happen. Then track promotion rates of diverse groups. Very importantly, now the job of this chief diversity or equality officer is to see whether the promotions into the entire system is happening from every group that represents, whether it is LGBTQ people, whether it is differently able people, women, minority groups in the organization, different cultural. They have to see the organization is on the track in terms of giving promotions to everybody purely. Again, I'm saying it, repeating it, on the basis of performance, productivity, education qualification, and the skill set that person brings into the organization and nothing else. Because that's what matters. Now, these are few best practices that most of the companies perform everywhere in their things. So I'm just going to name it. If you don't understand any of these are self-explanatory. But in case you don't know about it, you can ask that. So fair treatment talks about same treatment to everybody who is in the organization, no matter what background, no matter what level, no matter what village or tier 1, tier 2 cities, everywhere you are, you need to be given fair treatment in the organization. Then equal access to opportunities. Everybody in the organization joins not just for money to earn salary, but also for their career progression. So career development and progression can only happen when they have all equal access. So if you have a promotion policy should talk about this, that everybody who fills into this eligibility criteria, that they are MBA, they are from institution, they have this much experience, are eligible for promotions, then it should be taken thoroughly, completely like that. Nothing more should be there into the system. Then teamwork and collaboration, very, very important. I just spoke about it, so I'm not going into the details. Focus on innovation, creativity. We have already spoken about it too much. Organizational flexibility, responsiveness, and agility. Now, very importantly is agility. Agility is basically being agile. Being agile means that you're flexible to adapt to the situations that you are in. So your organization's flexibility, responsiveness, and agility has to be very, very high. You become adapted to a situation. So if there are people, so for example, a very common thing is कि fashion industry mein you will see there are many people who are from LGBTQ, right? Why they are there? Purely because they are very creative, right? Their sense of creation or their sense of creativity, innovation is very different when it comes to beauty, styling the dresses or fashion, all these things. So organization flexibility and responsiveness has to be there like that you have such divisions, then you can hire people with increased sense of creativity into the system. So that agility of adaptation should be there in the companies. Then conflict resolution. Conflict resolution is, again, I had already spoken to. Most organizations have a proper process of handling conflicts of people. So you can create a separate division for handling resolution for diversity and inclusion if you want in the organization, or you can include in the same conflict resolution center or committee that you have, collaborate with this particular topic. You can train them in this particular topic. Then evidence of leadership commitment to diversity, it's very important. Like we've just spoken about it in the best practices as well, that leadership commitment is very important for bringing the changes in the organization. In diversity, inclusion and equity, because अगर आप pay parity की बात कर रहे हैं, that the equal amount of pay is given to the people who comes with similar background and educational qualification and eligibility, then you have to ensure that your leadership has given a consent on that as well. Because if they won't give consent, what will happen in future? There are chances that they might take decisions away in a different perspective altogether. Then representation of diversity at all levels. We have already again spoken about it. Diversity education and training, again, sensitivity training, trainings on biases, training on how to handle certain situations. All these things needs to be there so that your conscious mind can be developed more than your subconscious mind. The only reason of education and training is that you become more and more conscious, aware about things. Then last is representation of diversity among internal and external stakeholders. So not just internal organization to talk about that, जो आपके stakeholders हैं, like vendors outside your companies, people you're calling for training, so different kind of vendors we keep dealing with as an organization. It can be vendors as recruitment agencies, it can be vendors as people who are providing us logistic facilities, different kind of vendors we keep addressing. So why not have representation from different diversified group into the stakeholders who are outside or external as well, whether it is customers or it is your vendors as well, right? So that you can become a 360-degree organization who is looking into diversity and inclusion from a different perspective altogether, not just internally. Right? Understood? Now, these are the three barriers that comes when we talk about changes. हमने सारे चेंजेस के बारे में बात कर ली, प्रॉब्लम्स के बारे में बात कर ली, सॉल्यूशंस भी बात कर ली, but what happens when we start implementing them in the organization? It doesn't go smooth. There is always a lot of barriers and a lot of problems that comes in. Okay? The first problem is convincing the leadership program, which I have not written out there because people get jittery. I take these trainings for leadership management also, so I generally don't mention all these things. But yes, the major problem is making them understand. If the management is not convinced, you cannot bring any solution into the organization for that. If the organization, especially in MSME sector, most of the family-oriented companies have a very, very strict mindset that they want to bring people from a certain background only, right? Religion basis, religious basis, बहुत ज़्यादा होता है. So that you have to take in mind that you try and train them slowly so that this particular problem does not really arise. Then what other top three barriers are? The first is middle management fails to execute diversity programs adequately. So even if you have a leadership say, your top management has agreed to the changes. They have given their word that they will try and bring in diversity, inclusion, and equity into the organization. Failure happens when we start implementing them. The middle management do not take it seriously because, again, without training, these people are like a fireball. They are full of their unconscious bias. If they are full of their unconscious bias, they will try and spread the same thing into the system. So first is to train them. Once you train them, then you give them proper situational training that these kind of situations will come, how you have to handle these situations. Then while implementing into the system, there are chances that they will remove these particular things. Then second point is budgetary issues, very big. The companies think that they have to spend some extra amount if they are bringing in these kind of efforts. Generally, it does not happen. You just have to change the way you are hiring or promoting. It's not really about funds. promotion of diversity, inclusion, and equity. When you're promoting it more, then it requires. You're advertising it, then it requires budgets and funds. This is where most of the organization says that we do not have extra budget for that. Then third is too focused on survival in the economy. Everybody is. We always feel there is some problem. I have to earn money. This is not my problem. Whether people are being hired from diversity inclusion, they are given inclusion or not. I just have to survive myself because economy is so difficult. मुझे मेरे घर पैसा ले जाना है. This is what my job is. So all these things comes as a very important bias again. So when we become too focused on that, and that is what happening in the world as well, right? We are not bothered what is happening around the world. लोगों के साथ क्या हो रहा है, दलित्स के साथ क्या हो रहा है. We're not bothered because we are earning, our family is happy, things are happening, looking good. And the same thing we follow in the organization as well. So when we start making a difference, even if you know that difference is not larger, that you are becoming what do you call it, leader into this particular thing, but at least even if you're writing a little bit about it, you are giving a thought to it that what is happening is Manipur is not correct. You know, just a thought also. If that has come to your mind, that means somewhere your mind is conscious that things are not happening good, right? And how the condition of women in the society is not really good in India, how the people create from different castes is not being given proper treatment in India. ये सब छोटा छोटा thoughts भी if we have in our brain, that means our brain is conscious, and when we move to the organization, we try and make changes there, right? Because organization में change करना is simple. छोटा system है, छोटा सा organization है. Larger system जहाँ organ companies countries की बात कर रहे हैं, वहाँ पर changes लाना difficult हो जाता है. But जब हम management पढ़ना start करते हैं, like we did yesterday, I started with that. It's a smaller system. Similar to how society works, performs, similarly, we perform a job inside a system which is called organization. So, similar kind of thought process will come, similar kind of biases will come, similar kind of problems will come. So, training our brain is very, very important when we have to deal with all that. Thank you so much, Ravi ji.
Thank you, madam.
So, this is how it should look like. So, the organizations at the end should look like this. Your inclusion, equity, diversity, and how you have to create the organization is people should feel belong to the companies. Simple. So diversity क्या मतलब हो गया? Bringing multiple identities. Inclusion हो गया, they are heard in the system. Equity हो गया, fair treatment. We are treating everybody as equal. Belongingness हो गया, that we are giving them a platform where they can showcase their full potential. They can thrive. Right? Similar to, you know, how a family works. So even if a family is there, you have a person, you have a family member who might be having a little disability. You might be having a family member who might be a gay or a lesbian or, you know, from LGBTQ. But what happens ultimately is that when we are coming out as a family, we are solving some problem as a family. They are given belongingness, that we keep ensure that their views, their values, and their beliefs are integrated with the entire family. So similar things we have to do for the organization. That's when the true HR comes out. Right? So now this diversity and inclusion and equity and unconscious bias, a portion of it would be repeated again in when we'll do performance appraisal next week. Performance management system, because again when we are talking about performances and how we have to ensure that everybody's performance is given equal rating into the system as per whatever they have done, productivity, then obviously these biases comes in. Right? I'll share the PPT. Any questions that you have, please feel free to ask. Any
Ma'am, you said
questions?
LGBTQ people are very creative. Can you say any one example, madam?
Generally, they are, see, they become creative not because of something else, but because these people have faced a lot of problems, scientifically is what it has been shown, that they face more discrimination than us since the childhood. And when they face different discrimination from childhood, and we have not faced as a normal gender, so what happens is they come out of those problems really well. So their mind tend to become creative because they think of more problem solving, more decision making, more kind of things altogether. So that's why they become more creative than us. So they train their brain. So if you understand our brains, so right brain is more logical and left brain is more creative, innovative, right? Ideas. So this is what happens when we tend to solve a lot of problems in our lifetime. Our left brain is also becomes much active, right? So this is what happens with them mostly. But generally also you see in fashion industries, these guys are creative from the perspective that their sense of bringing different changes is much higher, because fashion industry requires that adaptability to different kind of changes, right? So for a normal human being like you and me, if we see fashion shows, lot of fashion shows does not really make sense to us. In normal day to day wear mein we cannot wear those things at all, what we see on fashion shows, right? But for creative people, what happens is they tend to adapt to those changes much faster. Even if you see their dressing sense also is very different from us, purely because they know कि even if we are looking different, even we are doing this, हमें तो बचपन से discrimination मिला है, what happens if we are not facing discrimination again now? So that's how they tend to become much more creative and innovative in their ideas.
Thanks.
Yeah, most welcome anytime. Yeah. Any other questions anybody has? But again, it would be very generalized to say that everybody would be creative. It is only for the people who train their brain that way. We cannot generalize again the entire thing. But most of the people I have met during my career so far, I have seen most of them really doing very well, thriving in creative industry much more from LGBTQ. So I am also associated with an organization which works on LGBTQ people hiring from there. I'm also advisory board member for Sarthak Educational Trust, which works purely for differently abled and disability people. We train them free of cost and then we provide them jobs into SIFs. So if you learn more about Sarthak Educational System, that's why I get to know about these things in details, in deep. That's why I'm able to share all that. So because of Sarthak, I have learned so many things about mental disability, physical disability, all those things, and how these people are given opportunities. So companies like Being Human um, are giving so much of wonderful opportunities to people who are from differently able. So Salman Khan is not just being told that he's a good human, he's actually showing that also while hiring these people from their retail showrooms, in their retail showrooms. So you will see most of the Being Human stores, retail outlets will have at least 1 or 2 person who have certain amount of disability, whether they can hear, some they cannot hear, they cannot talk, something or the other. At least 1 or 2 people would be there in approximately all the stores. And that's how he has made sure. And he had a tie-up with Sarthak as well as other organizations through which he hires these people. So he has been open to all these things, which most organizations are not. Right? Similarly, Vishal Mega Mart also has been open about these things. So there are a lot of companies, Capgemini, they keep hiring from us, from Sarthak Educational Institution, from disability, mental disability, lighter mental disability. So people who can perform any sort of job, depending upon what kind of jobs they can really perform, they open up their offices for them. So many such examples are there. Right? So that's all for today. Let's meet in the next class. If you guys would be interested, I would love to share some case studies on diversity and inclusion so that you can at least read those real life case studies, that what is happening in the organization and how they are solving it. Right? Do give it a thought, do give it a time, and if you come across this question, we can solve and talk about those questions in the next class. All right?
Yes.
So thank you so much, everyone. And thank you for attending the session.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you.
Thank you very much. See you next Saturday.